There is at least one thing in Fire Emblem Three Houses which I do not understand how it came to pass. So, what makes Byleth a worse avatar than some others from previous titles? Well, it already starts at the character creation. As you can see, our options are heavily reduced from previous titles. Why is this so? Some may argue that it is for the sake of consistency in the animated cutscene cinematics. It may feel a little weird to perhaps give Byleth red hair, but then it all of a sudden switches back to the default color in a cutscene like this. Well, this is ultimately an argument which holds very little water. After DLCs and other updates, we can now customize Byleth and other characters to a certain degree. And they keep these appearances in cutscenes of this sort. I think most are fully able to accept that this is Byleth's default look, thus that's how she should be in these cutscenes, and that it should not be a reason to just remove the privilege of choosing hair color, eyes, and other things that help making our Fire Emblem avatar feel unique and special. And one of those things is her voice. We do not have a selection of at least 2 voices for each gender, but it's not like it even matters, considering Byleth basically has no voice acting, even in this game where everyone else has full-on voice acting. Why? Because she is the avatar, thus giving her a defined character automatically ruins the player's immersion? Ridiculous. Can you imagine feeling elated to be chosen to become the voice of a main character in a game of this sort? Only to be given a script which is less than 1 page long? 2 tops, and that's being awfully generous, I believe. Something you will immediately notice at the very beginning of the game is that they have it so that Byleth will often have to make a choice in how she responds to other characters and events. Lack of voice acting aside, this aspect is poorly executed in this game, and to me it bothered me more and more for each new playthrough. What do I mean by that exactly? At certain points in the game, it will seem as though you are given a big choice to make, a choice which will affect the progression of the story with perhaps different missions, different items, or different events. Straight up gonna tell you that isn't the case at all in this game. At least not until the game outright tells you that your choice will indeed affect the story. This is possibly just as bad as your choices not mattering at all. A game like this should not deliberately kill your sense of curiosity by basically confirming that unless a prompt like this pops up, your choices won't lead to different outcomes, or at the very least a different progression to the same outcome. And it was still absolutely terribly done in this game, and here's why. My very first playthrough was with the Blue Lions, and when I reached this point in the game, I thought my choice would matter in terms of the story progression. My first choice was this, just to be on the safe side. For my second playthrough, I went right back to the Blue Lions, thinking that if I chose this option instead, then I would experience the path in a different way. That was not the case at all. Not even here. So, here's the thing. A choice like this only occurs if you choose Edelgard, which basically means that until you choose to teach her house, you will never know that your choices in the other paths don't affect the story progression in the slightest. Assuming you don't even skip a certain event on Edelgard's path to begin with. Needless to say, I felt absolutely scammed. Because in a game with multiple story paths to choose from the get-go, there should never be one that offers a technical benefit or information like this which cannot be found in the other paths. You should not feel like you were unfairly left in the dark for not making the correct first choice per se. Now, before I explain further why the whole thing about making choices in Three Houses was handled horribly, it should be acknowledged that the game does have a handful of instances where your choices do matter in terms of how the other characters will respond. Instances which might make your second playthrough feel a little different from the first one. There are instances which test the player's memory, and even granting them a different cutscene after a mission is complete. Honestly, this is neat. It's not a big deal or anything, but I can appreciate it. But of course, we are not allowed to only have good things in this game. There is a myriad of choices which basically are the same, or not mattering in terms of how other characters will respond. Or a combination of the 2 points that I just brought up. Perhaps even more insulting are the instances where there is only one choice to make, which is basically the same as not having a choice in the first place, in case you couldn't put that together yourself. Like, I put the cutscene in autoplay, why the hell do you have to force me to pick up my controller for absolutely no reason? It's not like I have to worry about missing a certain line, I can easily bring up the cutscene log and even replay certain voice lines. Now, while these instances are fewer than the choices not being different from each other in the slightest, there are still so many of them.
Is this some kind of twisted joke?
This isn't even counting the ones from the Ashen Wolves DLC, supports, paralogs, and the other Goddess Tower events. Also remember what I said, these are actually fewer than the moments where the options are basically the same and do not matter at all.
Oh no!
Who in their right mind will think that this is an engaging element in the game? It's already bad enough that we're given so many instances of fake choices. Wait a minute, what's this? She said something on her own. And here too. So that means that all of this could have also been...
Who the hell is responsible for this fiasco?
The Goombas that the first enemy you see in the first game. That's it.
This has got to be done on purpose. Somebody must have deliberately tried to mock this sort of design choice by bloating the game with instances like this. So then, I believe my point has been made. Let's move on to the next one. Byleth's character sucks, and I believe the lack of voice acting plays a big role in this regard. It is also a reason why I always skip supports which she is involved in, unlike the other characters which I am, more often than not, okay with watching a second time. Okay, listen. I'm not saying that silent protagonists are inherently a bad thing. I'm just saying that they do not belong in a game like Three Houses. The sorts of games where they are acceptable are games like the Soulsborne series. Now, I don't really know about Bloodborne, but in the Dark Souls trilogy, your character's design can be customized to your liking. In addition to that, your character never has a defined background, nor do they have past experiences with the other characters which can be found later on from where you arise. You are simply exploring a world on your own merits as a player, which is why an avatar with a defined character is not a necessity in cases like this. Mentioning the Legend of Zelda games for a moment here, Link has been a silent protagonist for so long that I personally think it is fine if he stays that way forever, even though each Link since Wind Waker offers different character qualities despite the fact. However, should Nintendo decide to give him proper voice acting, if not proper text speech of his own, then I welcome the change. So, let's dissect Byleth's character background and role. She has been living most of her life as a mercenary alongside her father, even being granted an alliance by her enemies. She is given the role as a teacher at a prestigious institution, with the responsibility of many noble and commoner children riding on her shoulders. She is able to wield a powerful, legendary weapon through what can be labeled as the Chosen One method. And she makes a good tea host, but an atrocious cook, and most certainly not a good singer. With all of these points in mind, Byleth has no business being treated as a silent protagonist. She has too much going for her just to be treated as another dumb self-insert doll. You know, for as much shit as Corrin gets for being a naive leader, at least she has a defined character which I can get invested in. But according to many Fire Emblem fans, that is not how you design a character which is also your avatar. The choices made on her own are not allowed to be bad, even though they make sense on a story basis. And even when cornered into an impossible situation, having to stay silent while witnessing horrible events, she is not allowed to be a little bitch about it. It's not relatable. I've been wanting to make a video in defense of Corrin, but let's try to stay focused on Byleth for now. Byleth is honestly just a background prop in these cutscenes, but the game is seemingly desperate in convincing you that that isn't even remotely the case. After the success of the first mock battle, your house showers you with praise for your stellar tactics and experience as a mercenary. Yeah, thanks, I chose the easiest difficulty. This is the very beginning of the game, and it is established that Byleth has little to no emotions, so it is okay that she doesn't feel bashful or anything like that here. Whether the intention of this trope is for the sake of self-insert or not, it is a very acceptable trope. I think it can be interesting to see a lone wolf eventually open up and accept other people into her life. But the way it works in this game? Big meh. Dimitri explained how Byleth made him feel a little intimidated by her lack of emotions, and that he is relieved to finally see her more expressive side. However, this development is gratingly spontaneous without any sense of natural flow. We, the players, never see this development ourselves. The way it works here is that we have to be told by the other characters that Byleth is starting to become more colorful, which is very difficult to be convinced of to begin with, all things considered. Then suddenly, Geralt gets stabbed to death.
You're just a pathetic old man. How dare you get in the way of my brilliant plan, you dog.
Run along now.
Thanks for all your help, sir. Huh? What are you doing here?
You must survive. Merely because there is still a role that I require you to fulfill. Sorry. It looks like I'm going to have to leave you now. To think that the first time I saw you cry, your tears would be for me. It's sad, and yet I'm happy for it. Thank you, kid.
Why didn't you try to warn him by shouting? In short, this is yet another reason why silent protagonists don't work for a game of this kind. Unless the execution of the scene is changed, but I digress. Seriously, I don't really mind the way Geralt was killed here, but the fact that it could have been avoided by Byleth opening her mouth for more than just breathing? Ugh. Okay, so Byleth feels sad. Acceptable. But Geralt's death does not work in terms of invoking sorrow in the player. At least not for me. He was never playable, he was a green unit for just 2 levels, and he died for nothing. I think they totally could have made a paralog mission for Geralt too. I can't even feel sad for Byleth because the way they handle the monastery interactions is obnoxiously lacking. As much as everyone offers their condolences, Byleth is behaving no different than usual here. Perhaps I'm demanding too much, but there's no care put into how Byleth is dealing with her loss. There are no flashbacks of her time spent with Geralt during their mercenary days, and there are no proper cutscenes of her still crying, be it alone or with others. Heck, she basically has to be granted Sothis' permission to cry. Regardless, we pretty much have to make do with our own imaginations, and that cannot possibly be considered good writing or cinematography in this case. So once again, it is the other characters who have to tell us that Byleth has been crying and that she is finally back to her senses again. Like, was she ever drowning in sorrow? What exactly is the difference in her character here? Again, there is no natural flow, not even close. Needless to say, this game isn't exactly following the golden aspect of show, don't tell. I have to bring up Corin again briefly, because one of the things she was criticized for was how much the other characters were showering her with love and respect for seemingly no reason. Assuming that criticism was reasonably valid, then Nintendo did not listen when they made Three Houses. For some reason, the 3 lords of the game are overly attached to Byleth, which they shouldn't be, unless you choose their story route perhaps. Let us first refer to the Blue Lions route, my first playthrough. Remember when Edelgard said these things to Byleth?
You are the one person I did not wish to make an enemy of. Facing you, I grow weak.
I always thought it was because she was fearing Byleth's power that she was merely a dangerous person to have as an enemy. But upon further observations of both the game and other people's perspectives, apparently the reason Edelgard said these things was because she was conflicted to fight Byleth because she admired her. Seriously? To this degree? You are willing to instigate a war and burn countless lives in the process like a stone-hearted bitch, but you're also bi for a woman whom you hardly interacted with? Even after 5 years of Crimson Carnage and Byleth's complete absence, you're still thirsting for her. How? Let's slow down a bit and refer to a moment where Edelgard's affection works in a dramatic and meaningful way. So, you chose her house, only to later choose Rhea, her sworn enemy. After 5 years, you storm her palace to have her head and rescue Rhea. Even in her last moments, Edelgard cannot truly let go of Byleth, but still thinking of her as a dear companion. This scene works really well, but at the same time, it doesn't. This exact same scene plays in Claude's Path, a story route where Byleth hardly interacts with Edelgard, which means this scene is both heartbreakingly meaningful and a sloppy attempt at making the player feel emotional for Edelgard and Byleth's dynamic ending in such tragedy. If you can even call it that. Is this game just one big Edelgard x Byleth fanfiction? Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the same can be said about Dimitri and Claude. They are not exactly at Edelgard's level, but still. Hardly any form of interaction, and even after 5 years, they feel great regret that Byleth is their enemy.
Teach, you should have chosen me instead of Edelgard. No point in whining about it now, I suppose. Sorry, but I'll be taking the win today.
It's been 5 years, Claude, why would you whine? Oh, it's the sword of the creator you want, right? Right?
Why did you choose Edelgard, Professor? Why did you choose to walk this savage, bloody path? I cannot shake this feeling of regret. Regret that I must kill you now.
Dimitri, you hate Edelgard with every fiber of your being, don't you? Byleth should be dead to you for siding with her. This leads to my next point of there being a majorly missed opportunity for some interesting character dynamics and interactions. Why couldn't Byleth also be saying something in these moments?
In the end, I may not have gleaned your secret. Yet even if I die, someone will follow my work, and another after that. Such is the way of scholarship.
You have chosen to assist the Empire, even while knowing of their deeds. I am truly disappointed in you, Professor. Prepare yourself, heel of the Empire. A wretch like you will never be qualified to rule over Fodlan.
These are her former students and allies, but alas, there is nothing. Why couldn't they have made it so that Edelgard, Dimitri and Claude treat Byleth as just another regular enemy, you know, to create a meaningful contrast for not choosing their story routes? I guess this sort of happens here, but the Gronder rematch was overall a wasted opportunity in my opinion. Why couldn't Byleth comment on Hanneman's research being a most noble endeavor and perhaps warn him that unless he stands down, he will be erased? To which he responds that he has no choice or something of the sort. Why couldn't Byleth comment on Felix's unchanging attitude as a headstrong swordsman and perhaps say that it is somewhat reassuring that he won't hold back against her? Why couldn't Byleth say something like she chose Edelgard because she was her precious student and understood what she was fighting for, and that after hearing Rhea's ominous words and witnessing her dragon form, she felt used by her? I think you get the picture for now, so let's move on. Let's now address a part of the concept of recruiting characters in this game. Unless you manage to recruit certain characters before either defending or assaulting Garrick Mach before the timeskip, then they may become your enemy post-timeskip. Many of these characters have motives for either fighting with or against you, so them becoming your ally or enemy does make at least some sense on a narrative level. However, you can also make best friends outright kill each other, and it is hardly linked back to a difference in ideals being the cause for such tragedy. When you play Edelgard's Path and recruit students from the other houses, some of them express that they no longer can accept what the Church of Ceres is doing after what they witnessed when Rhea transformed. Being willing to kill your own family or friends is probably quite a stretch, but whatever it takes for the future, right? But again, the difference in ideals isn't always referred back to. A handful of times, best friends and family members will pretty much just say, "Sorry, that's what war is." There is no attempt at making the other part understand and imply some sort of compromise. I know these moments are supposed to be tragic, but the interactions can basically be summed up as, sorry, I guess. Which also makes me question what the whole point of them choosing a side even is. And no, you cannot convince me that it is because of Byleth that they are willing to potentially kill each other. It's ideals, so I don't understand why they must have Byleth represent those ideals in these moments. It doesn't work because enemy students don't really ask what it is that Byleth stands for. Again, there is almost no attention to imply attempts at compromise.
I'm talking ideals.
Excuse me. Forget it.
In a nutshell, basically. I may ultimately be against realism in fiction, and while it may not be a fundamental issue in this case, it still feels forced to unrealistic levels. Because of that, it does not work on the emotional level as it probably could have. And now, there is this as support. Why oh why does this as support exist as it does? It should not have been a romantic one. Sophie disappears for 5 years, then she suddenly returns with no clear explanation. Even her interactions with Byleth before they emerged were, how to say, one-sided overall. Let's just pretend that her return was explained, so why could it not have been a platonic as support like it is with Gilbert and Aloise? It would have made sense so much more over this completely unearned romance. I understand that otakus should have their needs fulfilled for the sake of good sales numbers, but my god, at least do it right! As for the other S-supports, lackluster for obvious reasons. Byleth can even become the ruler of the unified Fodlan, and while it does make sense for her to become a queen like that, it just doesn't even feel special and fulfilling. That's it for that. I didn't want Byleth to be seen as a self-insert because of the lack of voice acting, but all things considered, that seems to be the case. She is another lame self-insert. So, to avoid beating a dead horse, I will repeat one last time that design choices like this do not belong in a game of this kind. If you're honestly not bothered by this like me, then great, more power to you. I'm not saying that you're being an ignorant fool for not letting this design choice bother you, because there are plenty of other things to enjoy in this game too. However, I will say this. If this is a requirement, that a game must have a silent protagonist or else you won't even be arsed to give the game a shot, even if it may catch your eye with other things you find interesting, then that is a terrible mindset to have, because you're basically criticizing and punishing developers for putting love and care into defining their main protagonists, and that should never be okay. And the fact that Nintendo reverted back to this design choice, which ultimately takes less effort, ever since they released Awakening and Fates, makes me believe that the majority of Fire Emblem consumers are people with such mindset. And that's just totally lame. I see no reason that they cannot broaden their horizons, and I'll explain why shortly. I have come to be annoyed by people using the term relatable when referring to and criticizing fictional crafts. At this point, I'm never sure what they mean when they say that. Do they mean that certain decisions make sense, or that they simply relate to the character because of similar life experiences? Well, if it is the latter, then congrats Nintendo, I cannot relate to your main protagonist and avatar. And that's okay, because there isn't just Byleth in this game. Have you ever felt guilty for something your parents or other relatives did? Then Caspar's character may resonate with you. Ignat's too, I'd say. Have you ever felt cursed for merely existing and that you don't know what to do in order to escape your fate? Then you'll probably look towards Maria and Lysithea. Do you know what it's like to live in another country for a long period of time while struggling with the language? Maybe even dealing with racism? Then you'll definitely be able to relate to Petra and Dedu. Do you often feel like you lack drive and motivation, in the sense that you find it difficult to adjust yourself to a schedule which isn't to your fancy? Then Linhardt and Sylvain are characters which openly display such traits, and of course we cannot forget Bernie. Do you find it difficult to mingle with people who have ideals which conflict with your own? Then you may look to Felix. Did you grow up in an unstable family? Then Annette and Gilbert's relationship may resonate with you. If you've ever experienced a great loss, then you may look to Dimitri, Ferdinand, Constance, Edelgard, Rhea, and others. Look, I'm not saying that you cannot like a character unless you can relate to them. I'm just trying to say that you shouldn't dismiss their role so quickly. Maybe you'll take a liking to them. Do you wish that you were more optimistic? Maybe Raphael and Ash's character can help you with that. Have you ever found yourself suddenly having great responsibilities and that you're unsure of how to best deal with it? Then you may look to Byleth. Yes. Kind of unbelievable I just said that, right? Because again, she has so much potential as a defined character, but this stupid design choice just won't let her truly shine. Byleth, you were indeed not done justice, and I sincerely hope this mistake won't stay in the next Fire Emblem game. And don't worry, I'm actually glad to see you in Smash. So, if there was one way to sum up my feelings for you, take it away, John.
You're hard to love, but you're harder to hate.
What's this? Genshin Impact. Aw, what a cute little character. She's so squishy and precious. Wait, what's that? No. No. Not again! Not again with the silent protagonist! Thanks for watching, by the way.